Yasmin, how you doing? Ask excuse, they said boarding school? Like in the UK? Oh, okay, okay. There's Nico. Hey, Nico, how you doing? Good to have you on. The chats and stuff. Get some stuff up and going. Yeah, so of course, some of these kids decided they wanted to walk to KFC, which is about a 20-minute walk each way, plus at least a 30-minute wait. So they're going to be late and they're going to miss some of the stuff we do. Very strong rumors, absorption coming this year. And one of them chapters are very interesting. Ghosted, in luck, because guess what we do now? The absorption costing questions that came so far. With Teresa? Yeah. I don't think I know anyone that went to boarding school. I know people like went away right after, but like to like the US or like maybe like stayed by family and maybe worked for a year and then went to school thereafter. No, when I heard this, I was like, okay, that's interesting. Okay. Mhm. Right. Yeah. But that's how I did it. When before Cape, when we did A levels, it was GCE levels, and you had your whole lower 6th year to learn and absorb, and your upper 6th year, well, you had your mock and your term too, and then exams. So I think that's the better way to do it because you don't have to rush to it under the year. That to me is what it should be. They're running. What time when I walk? Oh. Hey, listen, right? Paige, you have a hole in your pants down there. Yeah. Okay, just checking. To make sure. That's the air condition. With the hot walk. Sorry. Taliana, Ayaz, Elon, afternoon. Jordan come back. Nice. Okay. Alright, so let's take my rule. Right. Aliana here. I'm not seen Anissa yet. So Ayaz jump on the inside. Okay. I see Jaziri here, I see Jordan, Kathy here. Marcus here, Noah here, Nyla here, Paige here, Sylvia here. All right. And then crash course people take our rules separate. Right. Okay. All right. Total cost center over preparing basis. I don't worry. We're going to go through that 2022 question and the 2023 question. But that's it. I don't have any more content on absorption cost center. Why is my image stuck? What's going on there? Hold on, just now. Google Meet? Okay, the whole Meet stick now. Alright, just now. Yeah, just now. Yeah. Let me try 24 first, right? Okay, there we go. See you now on the inside. Sorry, I see you now afternoon. How you doing? Right, Liam back on the inside. Afternoon, Liam, how you doing? Wait. Okay, there you go. That's back up and running now. Well, nice. Put that down. This was C-Sec students. Yes, C-Sec for sure. Hey, free fire boy. Shaylin, can I go through appropriation? Did appropriation already, Shaylin. We had a plan for this week. Right? We did partnerships and stuff week before. To meet. So far, boy, all right, around late with some stuff, but you know, we kind of making up for that. Oh, look, one of my other students' moms did a colorful list of topics per year. Okay. Thanks very much. Do that. Oh, crash course. Scared if LLCs come, you don't have to be scared. Just go on my channel and see how to do it. Yeah, guys, I just sent you all a PDF in the chat for paper one. Do you go to those? Yeah, we'll be doing paper one nearer to the exam. Yeah, so one of the parents apparently did up a file here where they color coded the topics and when they came. So how far back they went? 2018. Yeah, I'm not seeing like the earliest year I've seen here is 2018. All right. These are confusing. Just take your time with it. One thing at a time. Everything confusing until you figure out how to do it. All right, guys, have a seat now. Let's see if we can get this on the road. Because we had to stop by about 2:55, 3 o'clock. I can't go past 3. I have a very bright line at that point in time. Okay. All right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 people. All right. Cool. No problem. Sorry. Yeah, Shimo, this morning we did sales budget and production budget. So we're going to do the 2 absorption costing questions and the 1 cash projections question this afternoon, right? Guys, tomorrow we're supposed to have class 10 to 12 and 1 to 3. Sunday, we have a shift in time. I can't have a 10 to 12 class, but we'll do a 1 to 3. And if you can make like a half 3 to half 5 or a 4 to 6, we could do that too. So that's Sunday. I know not everybody could make that, right? True. It might. Everything might come. Yeah, everything might come true. I don't know where these people figure they know what's coming. But everyone like to feel they know something. So as it is, it's not mine. What topic are we doing today? we did sales budget and production budget earlier today. Now we're gonna do the 2 absorption costing particular questions and the schedule of cash projections from 2022 or something. All right, so just officially good afternoon to everybody who is here, right? Right, so let me just kind of clear off some stuff, right? So the absorption costing from 2022, absorption costing from 2023. Right, if I finish with that, I'm gonna close it off. Right, so we have the Jan 2021 cash projections. I hate that they call it cash flow statement. That's not a cash flow statement. They should know better. Right, this one we finished this one already, right? Yeah, we did. Yeah. I'll leave that up for now. I really feel like there was a second cash projections, but I can't see them. I mean, push comes to shove, I created questions with cash projections, so I'll just pull one. It shouldn't be an issue. Here's Luke. Okay, cool. So let me start by printing out the question. So everybody in my Google Meet should have these things in the chat already. Which one is that? Like I said, we'll do that after. I want to get the absorption costing ones down, and then we'll round back to do that one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 people. Okay, cool. All right, so we'll give this a couple of seconds to print. But here what I want to do while that printing. So this is section 10 on your syllabus, manufacturing and inventory control. So we did manufacturing a few weeks ago. We're supposed to do stock valuation tomorrow, FIFO, LIFO, AFCO, right? But this item here, sorry, that's not what I wanted to do, my bad. This item here, Item 5, basic costing principles. For example, cost plus pricing, markup pricing, and in the middle of those two, absorption costing. Yeah, this will be posted afterwards. Absorption costing, like I said, is a very large topic from the Form 6 syllabus. Lots of moving pieces. And a picture that one of my friends sent to me, or several pictures that gave me, she basically took pictures of an entire chapter of a textbook, an alleged CSEC PoA textbook with absorption costing, and the content there is quite fine, it's quite okay, but there's no indication on this syllabus, on this document, that I have to teach any of that. It just says absorption costing. They go into no detail, right? And because they sandwich it between cost plus pricing and markup pricing, I have an idea about what I think it should be, which is attaching certain types of costs, fixed costs and variable costs, to units of output. That would then lead into the cost plus pricing and markup pricing. But the stuff that they want you all to do with overhead absorption rate, I mean, we know what overheads are, but what's the absorption rate? Where did that come from? That's a lot of content to cover, especially in the context of the entire syllabus. Sure, they took out incomplete records in the majority of non-profit organizations, but the syllabus is already too big, right, to put this extra dotishness on, right? Now, again, I have nothing against the topic. I have something against the topic being on the CSEC PoA syllabus, right? So what we're going to do is not a from scratch thing. We are going to go into the participle questions and do the questions, and I'm going to walk you through and talk you through how to do them, right? We're also going to talk about a couple of things, sort of like calculations. But yeah, you're not going to get a set of notes from me on this. I have no handouts on it. I kind of refuse to make them because it shouldn't be on the syllabus. But maybe I'll have a change of heart at some point in time. Anyhow. Just give me a minute to make the body out. All right. Okay, so let me just check and see if you have any comments or questions that I asked before. So approximately how much marks will they get in paper 2? Nobody knows except CSEC. Phantom FF, they've never explained how they calculate their grades. We do not know if it's a fixed percentage or if they mark on a curve. We suspect that they do, but they've never released any information indicating how they do what they do. They're as transparent as a brick wall. Right? You think I saw stuff on a paper? You think you saw it on a paper? All right, well, yeah, well, it was on 2022 May and 2023 Jan. So that's what we're going to do now. All right, so folks, like I said, what we're going to do here is we're going to go through this question piece by piece, one thing at a time. I will explain what I need to explain as best I can. All right, and I'll also, in this particular question, you'll see me nitpicking and pointing out some things that I find kind of stupid. Anyhow, so let's start by reading. We have to read, right? So High Tech Limited is a manufacturer of toy cars. It has 2 cost centers. A cost center is like a production department, right? So they have assembly and finishing. So like assembly, they'll take the chassis of the car, they'll put the wheels on, they'll put the body of the car on, and then finishing, they might paint it, they might glue, that kind of stuff, right? So we kind of brick by brick, yeah. So we kind of deep into the production aspect of the operation, right? So they have an indirect cost. Now, again, this topic, the specific objective was objective 5 in the manufacturing and inventory control section of the syllabus. So all this stuff we talked about with manufacturing, like prime costs, overheads, indirect cost, direct cost, that stuff still applies. All right. It's just about what you call it, absorption costing. Hold on, who is this? Huh? Laura. Yeah, June 2022 and Jan 2023. But this is June 2022, right? Right. So long story. So indirect costs. So remember, we have direct costs and indirect costs. Direct costs are the costs of the direct materials, direct labor, and that kind of stuff, right? The indirect costs are stuff like here, like production supervisor salary. The production supervisor does not work directly in production. The supervisor does not physically make or put together these cars. Supervises. He might advise on how to do something. He might show somebody how to put it together, right? But he probably filing reports, etc., etc. So that's indirect. Apportion cost. Okay. So as you can imagine, in the factory, you might also have an office, an admin office, but that would be definitely non-manufacturing. And they might pay a rent for the whole building, right? So what? Remember when we did manufacturing, we had some of the expenses like electricity, rent, insurance. We had to share between either the manufacturing and the non-manufacturing aspect, either by a percentage or ratio or something, right? That's called apportioning costs. So to apportion means to share. In the context of accounting, when we apportion costs, we do so on some logical basis. So for example, if let's just say the factory, the entire building was 10,000 square feet, and the factory occupied 9,000 square feet, and the remaining 1,000 was the admin offices, right? So 9,000 square feet is 90% of 10,000, the full square footage, right? So based on that, what percentage of the rent do you think the factory should get? 90%, right? So the basis of apportionment is the logic, the rationale, or the way in which it was shared, right? So it might be square footage, it might be number of employees working based on whatever it is, the cost that we're trying to apportion, right? Okay. So we have indirect costs for these two costs. So the cost centers are assembly and finishing. So the production supervisor salary for the assembly is 5,000, for finishing is 5,006. And the apportion costs, which is each department's share of a larger cost, right, is 97.50 for assembly and 15,250 for finishing. Use the information given in the table above to calculate total indirect costs for each cost center. So guess what you had to do here? Add the two numbers in each column. That's all. Look how much space they give it to do it. For how many marks? 2 marks. Actually, I don't have a problem with the marks because it's quite an easy calculation, right? So what I'd like you to also do for me is to basically, you could take just 5,000 plus 97.50 and give me a total. I don't know that you could fit production supervisor salary, put the figure, apportion cost, put the figure, and then give me a total, right? But what I wanted to at least do is to put the 5,000 plus 97.50 here and give me a total. And same thing for finishing, 5,600 plus the 15,250, right? I'm going to push this up. I'm going to push this down. All right, so this is M22. All right, so this is May 2022. The name of the company, High Tech Limited. Let's zoom out a little bit. We don't need 283%. Thanks so much. Yeah, no problem. But happy to help. Right. So Rihanna saying 14,750 and Rihanna saying 20,000. All right, those seem like good figures, right? Okay, so I'm just gonna put calculation of total indirect costs. Right, so assembly and finishing. I would put assembly and finishing, right? So some dollar signs here. Right, so what we have, two items, production, supervisor's salary. Right, so 5,000 and then 5,600. And we're going to add the apportion costs. So again, apportion costs are shared costs, some kind of common cost like rent, insurance, or what have you, and they each got a share or an apportionment of it, right? We have 9750, we have 15,250. All we have to do is add them together. Right, so that's total in, sorry, 1 second. Okay, cool. So that's the first part. In class, people, are we okay with what you're seeing on the screen there? Any questions, anybody, anything? Right. So it didn't really need much knowledge of absorption costs. Then they asked for the total indirect costs. If for each department they give you 2 indirect costs, they add it together. I have no clue how they wanted to fit it inside of here, but I would just add the figures for 2 marks. All right, Google Meet, I know it's relatively easy, but again, I keep in track on everything, right? Cool, yeah, so let's give them a quick G. Please and thanks. Sorry, who's that? Axel. Oh, you're watching it? Okay, like, okay, no problem. Yeah, Trevor. All right. Okay, we're going again. All right. So on a scale of 1 to 5 difficulty wise, how that felt? 2. All right, cool. So it wasn't too difficult. Okay, next piece. The total production hours for the business are as follows. Oh, give me 1 sec. I forgot to put like a part A here. Right. So that's total indirect cost. Now put a little separator line. You just come back down. Hey, here we go. Okay. Total production hours. Yeah, to study everything. You're correct, Trevor. Cover your bases. Live tomorrow. Yeah, live tomorrow. 10 to 12, 1 to 3. Sunday 1 to 3, and then half 2 to half 5. Right. Okay, so in each of the cost centers, so you have labor hours and you have machine hours. So clearly you have people working, right? And you have machines working. So the top, when I say top, the first, this row here, labor hours, LH, you have 3,500 labor hours in the assembly cost center and 2,500 labor hours in the finishing cost center. For the machine hours, you have a little less, 500 for assembly and 1,500 for finishing. Now, okay, let's take a read. Additional information. The assembly cost center operates on a labor-intensive basis. You all heard about labor-intensive production? Right, so you have more people than machinery. That's correct. And then the finishing cost center operates on a machine hour intensive basis. Capital intensive, right? I don't know why they try to use these phrases, but whatever. Let's just leave it alone for now. Okay, so long story short, assembly uses more human than machine. Finishing uses more machine than human. Although if you look at the hours, that doesn't seem to paint that same picture, does it? Anyhow, that's what the question tells us, right? Okay, cool, right. So state the formula to calculate the overhead absorption rate. So let me explain this very quickly before we, now the formula is simple, right? But the context needs to be at least somewhat understood. Remember, in manufacturing, we have two sets of costs. You have your prime costs, your direct costs, and your overheads. Prime costs or direct costs are costs that can be easily and directly traced or attributed to units of finished output. If you make cupcakes, you can see the finished output that would contain the converted oil, flour, sugar, cinnamon, whatever, right? Your ice and your sprinkles. So you can see all that, right? So you have your direct materials. And then, of course, that finished product would be the output of a human as well, right? So the direct labor and direct materials can be easily traced to units of finished output. The indirect costs, such as, let's say, electricity, rent, depreciation of machinery, insurance, all these different things, how do we know how much to attach to each unit? And that's where the OAR, the overhead absorption rate, comes in. So remember, indirect costs are also called overhead. So what we do now, the concept is actually pretty simple. Imagine this. Imagine you had a rent figure of, let's just say, $1,000, right? And you made, let's say, 100 items of output. So it would be as easy as taking the total cost and dividing by the number of units. That's what we're doing, right? So here, the overhead absorption rate is the same concept. You're taking your estimated overheads, which you probably just calculated above, right? And you're going to divide by what we call the absorption basis. So remember we said you have to have a rational way to share or apportion costs. For example, you wouldn't apportion rent based on something like machine hours, right? You would apportion rent based on square footage because you're paying for space, right? Rent and machine hours don't have any kind of correlation, right? If you're talking about, let's say, depreciation on the machines. No, are you all right? Okay, yeah. Let's say you're talking about depreciation on the machines. You wouldn't use square footage to apportion depreciation. You might more likely use machine hours because the longer the machines for which they have been running is the more they've been in use, and hence the more they would wear down or depreciate, right? So you have rational, logical bases, right, that we can use to apportion or absorb the overheads. And when we say absorb, what we're trying to do is find a way to put the costs for every cost item, rent, insurance, salaries, all that stuff, we have to put each of those costs, some portion of it, on every unit of output. Why? Because you want to make a profit. How do we make a profit? You have to have a selling price, which is higher than your cost price. If you fail to attach costs properly or at all to your units of output, right? Let's say, for example, right, most of us say have a skybox and you'll bring in stuff from the States and you'll go and you'll clear it by the skybox page, right? So let's say on Amazon, you say, hey, I'm buying phone cases and they get a special on Black Friday or whatever. You say 99 cents for a phone case, but nobody here know. So you're still selling them for 100, right? So let me say you only decide, hey, I'll calculate my profit based on my revenue and just the 99 cents US per case. And you didn't factor in your delivery charge. You didn't factor in the duties you had to pay. None of that. And you sell the phone cases. And you say, hey, great. So you say you bought 100 phone cases for 99 cents. So you spend 100 US just to buy them, right? Yeah, factor in your delivery. Yeah, factor in your duty. Yeah, factor in VAT, nothing like that, right? So you paid, let me say 700 TT, 100 US, 700 TT, right? And let me say you had 100 phone cases and you sell for $10, right? 100 by 10 is 1,000, right? So you say, okay, $1,000 minus the 700 I pay for the phone cases is 300 profit, right? But then your pops or your mom's like, but what about the duties and the VAT and the delivery? How much was the delivery? They say, well, the Skybox charged me 20 US to deliver. Right, that's 140 TT. So you thought you had 300 profit, but you had to pay for delivery, not so? And what about the VAT and the online purchase tax and declare it? How much it costs you? 200? 200. So hold on. You thought you made 300 profit, but you forget to cater for your 140 in delivery and your 200 in clearance. So if you add 140 and 200, what you get? 340. And you thought you made 300 in profit. So if you don't properly account for all of your costs that you incur in providing your good or your service, you can improperly set up cost price and also an improper selling price for your product. And you could be you think you're making profit on every unit, when in fact you're making a loss on every unit. So a proper costing system is essential. And that's basically what the entirety of Cape Accounting Unit 2 is, costing systems. What are the different types of costing environments? What are the types of costing systems we could use, right? Anyhow, sorry, I went off a little bit there on a tangent. But long story short, what an overhead absorption rate is a way for us to attach overhead costs to units of output in order to make sure that we attach all the costs and cover them with the selling price. Because if you do attach all your costs, your selling price might not cover all your costs. And if your selling price don't cover all your costs, guess what happens? Worst case scenario, you break even. Sorry, best case scenario, you break even. Worst case scenario, you make a loss on every unit. And that's not what you want to do, right? So you have to cover all of your costs, right? So enough of that. So let me get into the formula. So I'm going to give you a formula here. I'll put it in a text box, right? Okay. So the OAR is equal to, right? So your estimated overheads divided by the estimated cost driver volume. Right now, the denominator can vary in terms of what you call it. You can also call it your estimated application base or your estimated absorption basis, right? It is the cost driver is literally the item that drives the costs up. For example, if we're talking about depreciation, the machine hours, the longer the machines are on for, the more machine hours, the more they're in use, hence the more depreciation, right? If you're talking about, let's say, electricity, again, machine hours could drive electricity up. So you want to have some activity, some occurrence that causes the cost to be incurred, right? Same thing here, like when I flick on the switches there, I put on the AC, my electricity cost going up, right? If I don't flick on the lights, if I don't flick on the AC, the cost mightn't go up as quickly, right? So what a cost driver is literally some activity or occurrence that causes costs to be incurred or to increase. And you want the cost driver to have some relevance or correlation to the overheads, right? Now, if you go on to do accounting form 6, you will learn that this kind of costing is actually the older version. It's a simple one, that's why it is still used, but there's a next one that actually uses multiple cost drivers to actually split up the overheads into different categories and cost it more accurately. It's called activity-based costing, but again, let me try and keep it on target here. So there's already 140, and we know on part B, part 1. Okay, so that's the formula. The OAR, or the overhead absorption rate, is the estimated overhead costs, or estimated overhead costs, right, divided by estimated cost driver volume. Okay. Now, what they want to calculate the overhead absorption rate for each cost center. So they want the OAR for assembly and they want the OAR for finishing. Now, how are we going to do that? Now, what do they tell us here about assembly and finishing with respect to the type of production environment? They said that assembly was what kind of basis? Labor intensive, right? So they said assembly was labor intensive. So if it's labor intensive, we're going to use labor hours as our cost driver. What they said about finishing? Finishing was machine hour intensive or capital. So what they're going to do is they're going to use machine hours for the denominator for finishing. And where we're going to get the overhead costs for these? Right here, from part A, right? So in part A, they asked us to calculate the total indirect costs. And as we know, indirect costs and overheads are synonymous. They mean the same thing, right? They're synonyms. So for assembly, we're going to take 14,750 and divide by 3,500 because as they told us, the assembly cost center is labor intensive, right? So you're going to take the assembly costs, the overheads, and divide by the volume of the application base. Sorry. What people? Oh, okay. Right. So we need the total overheads or total indirect costs. 70. That. And we're going to divide by the volume of the so you can call it cost driver or application basis. Oh, you mean as they gave it here? No. For you all, yeah, just do the calculation. I'm just doing it so that there's a bit more illustration, I guess, and explanation in terms of what I did and how I did it now, you know? So what you all will see would just be the 14,750 divided by, so for assembly, what's the basis again? It was the basis of labor hours. And what's the labor hours for assembly? Right, so we're going to take 14,750 and divide by 3,500. Right, now we could round off to up to 2 decimal places because it's dollars and cents, right? And for finishing, what was the basis for finishing? Finishing operates on a machine hour intensive base, so it's capital intensive, and the machine hours for finishing was how much? 1,500, right? All right, so the OAR. Okay, cool. All right, so Google Meet, if you guys are good with those two calculations, give me a quick Genie chat, please, on that. If you need me to re-explain, it's not a problem. I wouldn't go into the whole explanation of what the OAR is and I'll just do the calculation, right? Although the whole explanation is probably helpful. Cool. In class, people, are we okay with what's on the bottom of the screen there? The calculation of the OARs. Do you have any questions? Anything I want to re-explain? Okay? All right, cool. Re-explain. Right, so now do. An OAR is an overhead absorption rate. Is the rate at which we attach overheads or indirect costs to units of output. Right? To calculate it, we need to have the overheads, which we have from the first part of the question, and we also need what we call the application base for each department. The application base or the cost driver is that thing that causes the overheads to be incurred. But the question is supposed to tell you. What they told us here is they said in the assembly center, they operate on a labor hour intensive. So what they're saying here is that labor hours is the cost driver for overheads. Well, Luke, I didn't use dollar values for the cost drivers, eh? These, oh, right, sorry. So actually, Luke pointed out something good. Guys, what is this? What are these symbols here? Right. But what did it tell us? What does the label tell us here? Hours. So these dollar signs shouldn't be there. Luke, thanks again for pointing that out because, yeah, that was one of the points I wanted to tell you. They put dollar signs over hours. It's not. right? Thanks, Luke. I forgot, right? Because it said here production hours, right? Okay, sorry, Nado. Let me come back to Nado, right? So Nado, what we will do to calculate the OAR, you have to take the overheads, like I said, which you had in part 1, and divide by the application base or the cost driver. That is the thing that causes the overheads to be incurred, and the question will tell you what that is, like they did here. So for assembly, they assumed labor hours. So we will take assemblies. We'll take assemblies overhead costs of 14,750 and divide by the 3,500 for labor hours for assembly. For finishing, they said finishing has a machine hour intensive. So what they're assuming is that in finishing, the machine hour is driving the overhead costs. So for finishing, right, the overhead is 20,850 and the machine hours is 1,500. So we divide 20,850 by 1,500. And look at that. How I got those two? You coming a bit late? You added these figures, right? For assembly, you added 5,097.50 and you get 14,750. Finishing, you added 5,600, 15,250 and get 2,850. All right. Cool. Right. Okay. So we have the OARs. That's B part 1. That was the formula. B part 2 was the calculation. Notice that's 6 marks for the OAR for each. Well, 3 marks for each department. Eh? What are you doing? Oh, okay, thanks. Okay, well, no problem. Glad to bring you up to speed. Okay, then where did the 3,500 come from? Okay. All right, labor hours for assembly. Because they told us that the assembly cost center operates on a labor hour intensive basis. All right. So we're using the labor hours to calculate the OAR for assembly. I hope that helps. Right. Okay, next. All right, go to the next page, yeah, ladies and gents. Next page. All right. 5494, Nikki said. That's Saturday. That's tomorrow. Yeah, June. Right. So High Tech Limited has received an order for some toy cars. The production of one toy car requires the use, requires the use of 5 kilograms of direct material, which is purchased at a cost of $10 per kilogram. And the breakdown of the remaining production details is as follows. Okay, so again, we have assembly and finishing, again with the dollar signs. But despite that fact, what we have inside of here, what unit is this? It's hours, right? Okay, so again, the dollar signs were supposed to not be there, all right? So for labor hours, we have a cost per labor hour. That wasn't there before, right? So they've introduced some new information. So the production of one toy car, right? So in the assembly department, one toy car takes 3.75 hours, 3.75 hours at a cost, labor hours at a cost of $25 per labor hour, right? In the finishing department, one toy car takes 3.5 hours to do at a cost of $25 per hour. So the cost per labor hour is constant across the departments. Well, here's Valentino. Dominant factor? I never heard that name. Nayona, this is CSAC. Hey, Tino, afternoon, how you doing? Zaria. Yes, sir. Yeah, I know, just you told me, it's not a problem. We're doing we did the budget questions earlier, now we're doing the absorption costing question for 2022. So you know how to kind of catch up. Right. Yeah, cool. Zaria, right? The OAR, the formula for the OAR, right, is the estimated overheads divided by the estimated cost driver volume or the application base, right? The thing that we have that the question says is causing the overheads to be incurred, right? So the estimated overhead costs will go from part 1, right? Total indirect costs. Indirect costs are overheads. The cost driver volume or the application base comes from here. The assembly cost center operates on a labor hour intensive basis. So we're taking the labor hours in assembly and dividing the assembly overheads by that. So 14,750 divided by 3,500, right? For finishing, it says that the finishing cost center operates on a machine hour intensive basis. In other words, in finishing, we're using machine hours to apportion or share overheads. So that's the cost driver, right? Or the application base. So we'll take the overheads for finishing, finishing, 20,850, and divide by the number of machine hours that they said they're going to use. And that's how we get the OER, right? So I hope that helps. Cool. That's that piece. Right. So now, right. So that's what this table is telling us. This table is telling us how many labor hours each car takes in assembly and finishing, and how many machine hours they take as well. Now, what do you notice between these two lines here in terms of the information given? They give us a cost per hour here, but not down here. Because, I mean, for labor, you had to literally pay people. Do you have to pay machines? No, right? So what's going to happen there when you have to figure out the machine hours? Because remember, machines are usually overhead costs, right? Right, so that'll factor into the depreciation. But the OAR, overhead rate, is what we're going to use to cost the overheads, right? But there's an issue with the question, which I'll point out just now. But that's the concept here. For labor hours, that is usually direct, and they usually have a rate per hour. So that's just a straight case of multiplication of the cost per hour by the number of hours. For the overheads on the machine hours, that's a different story. The OAR is probably going to be used to help with that costing. But let me get there, right? Right, next. It says here, use the spaces provided in the tables on page 25 and 26 to calculate and arrive at the total cost of producing one toy car. Remember to apply your previously calculated OARs for the two centers appropriately. Absorption rate. Sorry, hi Chrissy Poo. Okay, hi Paige. Okay, check this, right? You're seeing this big table down here. What does it say? Direct materials calculations, materials total cost. You're seeing the information, right? 5 kilograms. So the production of one toy car requires what? 5 kilograms of material at a cost of what? $10 per kilogram. So if you're using 5 kilograms at a cost of $10 per kilogram, what's the total materials cost per car? 50, 5 by 10. Explain to me why we need this to show that. You know what you want? You all only me with Lisa Simpson, she didn't so? That's me in this whole question. What do you want? Right? So I don't even know how to tell it to fill this out, but I go and try this as simple calculation. Direct materials cost, quantity of materials per unit multiplied by cost per kilogram. That's it. Right? And again, if you all just want to show the multiplication, 5 by 10 equal to 50, that's it. Agreed. Don't waste your time. Anyhow, Chocho say, person who was sitting the exam was drunk. I would not doubt that. Me know. Yeah, use the whole space so that they need narratives. I just read real big, so they make space for me. All right. Well, if that's what you need, that's what you need, buddy. Do your thing. All right. Yeah, guys. So let me pull up the file. Okay, cool. I'll put a little separator line here. Right. So I just gonna head up calculation of direct materials cost per unit, right? Per unit per car. So the quantity of direct materials per car is 5 kilograms, right? And then we're going to multiply that by cost per kilogram. Cost per unit of direct materials, which is simply dollars per kilogram. So much? 10. They didn't have marks at the end of this table, but they gave marks at the end of the next 7 marks. But the 7 was for the materials costs, the labor and machine costs, and then adding them together. So I would have you might have probably get maybe at most 2 marks for the materials. You'll probably get 3 marks for 3 or 4 marks for the next piece, and then 1 mark for the last piece. Right, so all we gotta do is take this, multiply by that. All right, so this here is the, sorry. Right. Is there any suggestion how we should build the table? Legibly and correctly. Be scared. Don't be scared. face it. When I say don't be scared, you can be scared, but do what you have to do. Be confident. What's confidence? Winner's mentality. Well, you gotta do what you gotta do. You could be scared and still do what you gotta do. That's it. Cyprity. Yep, that's it for the materials. That's it. I don't know what all this space was for. If there wasn't the film Star Trek or Star Wars and all that space. Me and O. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna show this information now. You won't want to highlight. Stop it. Right. Next page. So this table here is what we had to use to do the production hours calculation. Now, clearly they meant the cost of production hours calculation. Or the production hour cost something. They meant to put costs. They didn't, right? Now, assembly. So they have labor hours, machine hours, and then total. So this here caused a little bit of hullabaloo because like, what are we supposed to put here? Now, honestly, for labor hours, that was easy. Because for assembly, we're going to put how many hours here? 3.75. What was the rate per labor hour? Nothing for the other side. I don't know what they wanted to put. The total? 25, right? So here, you're going to put 3.75 by 25 and get my figure, right? Or, right? And for finishing cost center, for labor hours, what are you going to put here? 3.5 by 25, right? And then you're going to add those two figures to get a subtotal across in this column here. That's it, right? That is the question of the hour. What about the machines? So the machine hours, we have 5 hours for assembly and 2 hours for finishing, right? But machine hours is for overheads. If you remember, what they told us about the assembly department, they used what kind of hour, what kind of rate there? Labor hour. So when you did the OAR, we divided cost by labor hours. So what we would have gotten was a cost per labor hour. And we can't multiply that by machine hours because that's not going to give us anything meaningful. Right? For the finishing department, however, what they told us here, it operates on a machine hour intensive basis. So when we did the OER calculation, we would have taken the 20,750 whatever and divided by the 1,500. So in that case, you have a cost per machine hour, and we could just very well multiply by the 2 hours there. So the problem here, in quotation marks, existed for the assembly cost center's machine hours. It clearly means overheads. So what you have to do is take your OAR and multiply it by the labor hours, which initially seems like exactly like what, right? How are we supposed to know to do that, right? Again, I don't know, right? They would say, well, it's supposed to be taught it. Based on what? On your inclusion of 2 words in the whole syllabus? Just mean CSE products spending money on extra. They clearly do. They clearly do. Right. So let me start to put something together. So give me a second. Let me see if I can just kind of recreate the business here. Right. No, okay, I need a third thing, right? Okay, cool. So production hours calculation. I put in cost because clearly that's what we calculate, right? It's not just hours, right? So we have the assembly, finishing, and then total, right? Total. Okay, so we have labor hours first, right? Right, so mine going to look a little different. Okay, so for the labor hours for the assembly cost center, that's, I mean, for both of them, that's fairly easy. All we have to do is take the labor hours given to us in the question and multiply by the labor rate. Right, so let's take the labor hours. Whoa. What is your story? Right. Multiplied by the labor hour rate, which is 25. Cool. That's equal to this, multiplied by this. For finishing now, what's the labor hours? Is 3.5? What's the labor rate? Same 25? And when they multiply, what do we get? 3750. And then what you're going to do, you're going to add going across. Because they have a total column, right? No. Now, to be honest, you could, You could add these two and you just bring across the 25, right? Because that way, you should get it, Yeah, same 180, 125. All right, okay. So once again, let me recap that just in case anybody missed it, right? What they want us to do here in this table, so they just have production hours calculations. They clearly want us to find the cost attached to the production hours. We have two types of production hours, sorry. We have labor hours and we have machine hours. For the labor hours, it's kind of easy. This is per unit, per car. So in assembly, each car takes 3.75 hours. In finishing, each car takes 3.5 hours. And they give us right here that the labor hours are costed at $25 per hour. So all we have to do is multiply the number of hours per unit by the cost per hour. That's what we're doing, right? So in assembly, we do 3.75 by 25, we get 93.75. In finishing, we do 3.5 by 25 again, we get 87.5. And then we add going across, right? This here, now they did give us a column to the end, right? But you don't have to show this piece here. You can just show the total, to be honest, right? Okay. So I'll pause there for a couple of seconds. If anybody has any questions, now is a good time to ask. All right? If you're good, then cool. Right, I'm going to drink some. Wait, let's finish my water. Nope. I'll get some water in my system. Oh, it's not fillable. Yeah. I could convert it. Hopefully this do come. Rose? I hope so too. But you know what hope make a man do? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kelly, that's because the 25 was the cost per hour. Well, that's happening more sometime in the food court. So. But then when that line long, they'll come by next person. It's simple but kind of confusing. Yeah, you see, if you're just trying to learn everything in one go, then yeah. Right? Not really. She occupies a space that I offered. Technically, I work for her because I started tracking all the fees and things. Technically. All right. Now let's talk about the machine hours, right? So for the machine hours, as well as get a little funny. Right? So if you follow the protocol from the previous part of the question, you might just take the hours 5 and 2 and multiply by the machine hour rate. But here's the thing. Did they give us a machine hour rate? No. Do you really ever hear about people paying machines per hour? I mean, okay, maybe if you have like a slot machine or some kind of, but that's not what, right? Right, if you're in it, right. But in this case, no. So in this case, usually with machine costing, it's overheads, usually, right? So what we had to do here is, first things first, right? Sorry. Let me just ask the let me just answer my babysitter. Sorry, Luke, does the cost driver always have to be the dollar value? Or that's the question you asked. No, the cost driver is not usually dollars, but it can be. Nobody hours. All right, sorry. So for machine hours, right? So usually what we use as the machine hour rate is the OAR, right? Now we did calculate those OARs on top of here. All right, so we have the OARs there. All right. So for the assembly department, the OAR was based on what again? It was based on labor hours, right? Now, what that means is that this figure down here of $4.21 is $4.21 per labor hour. We can't multiply that by 5 hours here because this is not labor hours, right? So that's where it got a little confusing, right? So the price per hour is going to be the same. Yeah, twin. Yeah, that's correct. Right. Now for the finishing department, we could, because the finishing department, what was the application base for the finishing department? They said it was the finishing cost center operates on a machine hour intensive basis. So we took the machine hours, right, and divided the cost by that to get the 1390, right? See, 2850 divided by 1500 as the machine hours gave us the $13.90 per machine hour. So for your finishing department, right, you could take the 2 hours, right, the 2 hours, and you could multiply it by the same by that 1390, right? In that case, right, we kind of good to go, right? So this was the machine hours, and then we have to multiply by the OAR. Right. Now, the machine hours only really applies to the finishing department, right? So again, this is where it got a little ticklish, right? For the assembly department, the OAR is based on labor hours, all right? Yeah, Eri, not now. Do you have information on how to do this? If it does you have information on how to do this, then cool, we could discuss it. But let me just finish it first now. We could talk about that just now. You could also message in the chat. We could discuss it there first, right? Yeah. Sorry. So we can't use machine hours for the assembly department because the assembly department's OAR was based on labor hours. So we actually have to use labor hours of 3.75. Sorry, Sachi, what are you saying there? Okay, I'll check it back just now, right? Right, yeah. So 375 is the labor hours and the OAR is the 421, right? When they multiply, you get 1580, right? So this, like I said, this was the one that had us scratching our heads a little bit. But that was the only logical thing you could have done, right? If you're using the OAR to cost the machine hours or to cost the overhead, so machine hours, right? Using the OAR, and remember the question said that, the question said here, hold on, let me see, can I highlight it? Right? No, I can't. Right? Remember to apply your previously calculated OARs for the two cost centers appropriately. Right? To apply them appropriately. Right? So yeah, so again, when people saw the machine hours, they're like, okay, well, clearly I had to multiply the OAR by machine hours. That was correct for the finishing department. But it couldn't be correct. It could not be correct for the assembly department. Because the assembly department's OAR was based on labor hours, not machine hours, right? Okay. Anyhow, Right, so we add what? No, we add going across. Right, so of course we can't really get like totals here like we had up here because these things are not the same. This is labor hours, this is machine hours, and these are two different rates. Sorry, that one was hard. Okay, cool. Okay, right, and then let's just finish this off real quick. So materials costs, okay, we did already. Right, so we have that. Right, okay. So what they want is the total going down, right? So the other totals they want for us. Right, so we have to add these two figures here as well. So the total for assembly is that. The total for finishing is that. And then if you add these two, 181, 25 and this, you get that. And if you add going across, we're supposed to get that as well. So this 224 is either the sum of these two totals or these two totals. Right? Okay. Yeah. So that was to me the kind of hardest part of the question. Now, this is the part I laugh at every time. Well, I say laugh, but I mean cuss. The top line in that table, what does it say? The overall total cost. As opposed to the not overall total cost. What does total mean? Not overall. So they want the overall cost or the total cost. Okay. Overall. Something. Again, Lisa. Right? Anyhow. So the materials cost. What was the materials cost? $50. What was the production hours total? $224.85. So you put 50 here, $224.85 here, and then you have your overall total cost. So Carl, sorry. Right. So calculation of the overall total cost. Right, so materials, that was 50, right? 50. And then production hours. That's the overall total cost there. That's so those three things were 7 marks. And then they're talking about markup and yeah. 2022? Well, with the amount of explanation I had to do. But the other questions weren't that bad, to be honest. So the paper was doable, but for this dotishness. And yeah. And I was told that it actually was scrapped. I've been told that by a reliable source. Because they put dollar signs over hours, they asked for overall total cost. They had OERs for labor hours and then they had to for machine hours. So they could, and they used to. But I don't. They used to check the paper before they would give it out. Who knows? Who knows? Just now. Let me just finish off this question and I'll pull up my screenshots from what ChatGPT because somebody else had sent it in WhatsApp too. They fed it into chat and they got different predictions than I got. Yeah. No, we were just feeding past paper questions like the topics into ChatGPT and asking them for predictions. Okay. So High-Tech Limited has a 50% markup policy, defined markup pricing. Markup pricing is where you take a percentage of the overall total cost and add it on to the overall total cost to get the selling price. Cool. Calculate the total dollar value of the markup on one Scalextric toy. Is that 50% markup? Okay. So the markup is equal to 50% of 274.85. Right, now they would have given you 137.425. Obviously, if it's dollars and cents, we can't have 3 decimal places, all right? And now calculate selling price for one Scalextric toy. Selling price is equal to the cost price, 274.85, plus the markup that we just found, 137.43. Mash up. Right. Yeah, so we only took 1 hour. Oh, thanks for the ice cream, Ali. Right. Now we have another question like this to do, but I promise you it's not as bad. Right? I can actually give it to you all and you all could probably do it on your own, to be honest, right? Huh? I'm gonna print it out for you now, right? So just give me a second. I'm gonna put out a print for the people. Yeah, I'll put the print now. Just now, hold on. Right. Right. Jan 2023. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, cool. So limited to 10. Do I have 10? Do I have 1? I can walk. Put it out. Okay. What year is this? The one we're going to do now? The Jan 2023. Jan 2023. They do have advance in Jan. No. No advance, no econ, no IT, I believe. There is one sitting a year as far as I know. Hey Stephanie, how you doing? All right, guys. So while we wait until print, let's just take a quick read on the screen, right? So again, this is the Jan 2023 question. All right, so Ella's Lee is the owner of the wedding cake maker. She uses absorption costing to price her products, okay? Ella's Lee has provided the following information on costs, all right? That's the exchange, yeah, use the account here. Place a check mark in the relevant column of the table to indicate whether the cost items are direct or indirect production costs. Okay, so we could talk through this and you can put the ticks when you get the page, right? So cost items or overheads. And then so you're gonna put a tick under the correct box for each item, right? So the salary of the cake decorator. So if it's the cake decorator, are they working directly on the cake? Yes. So would that be a direct or an indirect cost? Direct. I agree. Rent for the factory. Is that cost, can that cost be seen on the cake? You have to attach the rent, yes, but you can see the cake decorator's efforts on the cake, yeah? The cake itself is some of the ingredients, yes? Where's the rent on the cake? It's indirect. Machine depreciation, indirect. But the tick looking like a script because they don't know how to get the symbol for the tick. So they put the closest thing that looks like it. It does look a little more like a tick this time, but they had the last time they actually had a square root sign. And cost of raw materials used to make customized cakes. Direct. So it started off nice and easy. Based on mass. I'm pretty sure that there will get some questions that have to do with mass. They'll get some questions that have something to do with mass. They do. But you gotta revise. Is that a combination? You have to enter the combination. Sometimes I might get a paper right after the exam done. Other times I might get a paper even more advanced. Usually like
I always be here for paper one.
yeah, I might do all that.
But again, we divide it down.
No, he went to his grandma's, but he was online. He came online this month. He asked for a copy of the paper for tomorrow when he comes. All right. Yes, Stephanie. Well, I hope you're preparing for it, huh? So let's paralyze you there. All right, folks. So you all put your ticks, right? So the first and last were direct, and the two middle ones were indirect. Okay, let's see if you can round this off. Next item. The following details are available about the indirect costs for the decorations department. Okay, cool. Let's see what they're telling us here. So decorations department in indirect overheads. Now, overheads are indirect costs. Indirect costs are overheads. So you can either put indirect costs or overheads. I don't know why they put indirect overheads. Cook for real? Well, cooking is a good thing, you know. So allocated costs and apportion costs, right? So let me explain these two. To allocate costs, okay. Imagine you all went out to a restaurant to eat. Let's say TGI Fridays, right? So let me say it's me, Paige, and Shamo going to the restaurant, right? I ordered the burger. Paige, what you ordering? I do an example. I call it. Imagine we went to a restaurant. You, me, and Shamo. I order a burger. You order what? Pasta. Shamo, you order. Shamo order steak. Yeah. And Shamo steak is the most expensive thing on the menu, right? So my burger costs 100. Your pasta costs 100. Shamo steak is 500, right? Well, let's say 4. So 100 plus 100 is 2. 2 plus 4 is 6. And then the bill comes. The bill saying 6. So Shamo say, we can split it, right? So we mean split it. So you say 600 divided by 3 is 200. So you pay a 2, you pay a 2, and he pay a 2. I say, hold on, but I buy a burger for 100. Why I had to pay 2, right? Understand? So in that case, what we could do, we could allocate the costs. If you buy a steak for 400, you eat it, you pay your 400. If you buy a pasta for 100, you pay 100. If I buy my burger for 100, I pay 100. So that's allocation. You're giving to the department the costs that are directly incurred by it, right? The apportion cost now. So imagine the three of us say, okay, look, we all want the cheesecake. So we say, okay, bring cheesecake. And they bring one big cheesecake and we each eat an equal amount, right? In that case now, let me say the cheesecake was, let me say 300. So if we each eat an equal piece, what we going to do? We're going to each pay 100, right? So that's apportionment. We take a total cost and we divide it or share it up depending on how much each person use. We could food drop. We could go. I think going is more fun. Right. Now look at what they asked you to do. Calculate the total indirect cost in the decorating department. Show all working. So yeah, go ahead. So after all that explanation, all you have to do is add 17 and 3.
Yeah.
Right? So I have to get this subject though. You could get Free Fire, you could get it. Again, you have to practice, you have to do the work. Right? And the exam ought to come good. You have no control over how the exam comes. You only have control over your efforts and what you study. I understand it's a frustrating predicament to be in. I find it patently unfair that they have a syllabus with, let me say, 10 sections, right? Out of the 11 sections, 1 or 2 of them kind of worthless and they currently tested anyway. Let me say 10 sections. You have 10 sections, you have 5 questions. 10 divided by 2. So you're going to tell me you're going to bring what, two topics per question. And you can't even test that deeply because you have a 3-hour time limit. The CXC PoA paper 2 is the longest paper 2 in CXC. Yeah? Apart from art. But yeah. English is 2 hours 40. Maths is 2 hours and 40. Art maths is 2 hours and 40. Well, it's 3 hours.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Talk to them, you know.
I just walked in.
It don't feel so.
I didn't know the time.
What time will that pass?
But seriously, school's gonna allow you to walk out.
What are you going to do? Chain it to a table?
That's what I want to know. But the thing is, what happens is a lot of the time, so for Spanish, our Spanish
Qualifications
teacher
for
did
keep?
exam. For Spanish, our
It
Spanish
differs by
teacher
school.
did the exam with us.
What's she going to tackle to the ground? There's not jujitsu class.
That's true. She can have mine. She would call my mom.
Your mother will take on. That's exactly what I'm telling you. All right, so this is the Jan 2023 question. What question is it again? 2. Oh crap. All right, question 2. Ellerslie absorption. Yeah. I went to Starbucks this morning.
I saw you there at some point.
Yeah,
Yeah. One day.
that sounds familiar.
No, I saw you driving out there. I said, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, on a morning, that's my route to go to drop stage to school. So yeah. All right, so let me start doing. So okay, cost items / overheads. Direct, indirect. Cool. So salary. Oh, sorry, I had a bowl out, right? Randall. Let me just tell Teresa uncle something real quick. Hey, Randall, yeah, tomorrow we're supposed to have 10 to 12 and an hour for lunch and 1 to 3. Sunday, we having a 1 to 3, half hour to hour break, and then 4 to 6 basically, right? We might finish about 5:30, but 6 o'clock. Monday, I might start at 1, but most of the kids have English and Spanish. So 4 o'clock for sure. But if you want to come for 1, let me know. I'll see if I can make myself available. Some of the others will be here too. Right? But I'll know more about that nearer to the day. But tomorrow 10 to 12 and Sunday 1 to 3 and after to half 5. Possibly 4 to 6. Very nice. All right, so where was so salary of cake decorator. Right, so we said direct, right? Where my tick? Oh, I know how to do. Hold on. Oh, where you going? All right, hold on. Edit rule. All right, so show icon only. value is greater than or equal this, or this greater than 1, right? So like on, I just want text, right? Yeah, so greater than 0, greater than 0. Yeah, yeah. And then we'll take that and apply it to everything here. All right, lovely. Okay, cool. Right, then we have rent for the factory. That's indirect, right? Cool. We have machine, sorry, I don't know how I got capped. Machine depreciation, that's also indirect. And the last thing we have is the raw materials. All right, another whole thing. Cool. Okay, so we good with the first piece? Lovely. Right. Cook. Sean, how everybody getting cooked? I understand. Was it in culinary school? What is the food? No. Right. The following details are available about indirect costs to the deck. Okay, so the decorations department, yep, indirect overheads. Lord have mercy, these people. It's confused me as to how they have a job. Right. You have your allocated costs or portion costs. So these are both overheads. What they want, calculate total indirect costs for the decorations department. Show all working. Show all working for 2 marks, right? Okay, cool. So there we go. So calculation of total indirect costs for decorations. All right. So what we have? Allocated costs. $70,000. And we have a portion cost. Right. So total indirect cost, yeah? Okay. All right. In class, people, we go with that one? All right. Sorry. Elon, the box not as big this time. Yeah, sure. So make sure and show all your working for the entire 2 marks, eh? All your working. Right. The following details are available about the production hours spent for labor and machinery in the decorations department cost center. Okay. Decorations department cost center. All right, all right. All right, decorations department details for December 2023. Right, machine hours 400, direct labor hours 100. Okay, thanks for the Okay, cool. State which is the dominant factor. Oh, that's somebody asked about that just now. Dominant. So, which is the dominant factor in the decorations department based on the tabulated information above? So, which of which of these are there more hours? Machine hours. So, the dominant factor will clearly be machine hours, right? Okay. Okay. Using the information from A part 2 on page 10 and B part 1, calculate an absorption rate, the OAR, for applying the overhead costs in the decorations department. Sure, we can clearly, that's 3 marks. Right. So, in case you didn't remember, right, the calculation of the OAR for the decorations department right. Okay. So what's the formula for that again? So you have to take your estimated or total overheads right, and then divide by the so you have to divide by the volume of the dominant factor, right? What did we say the dominant factor was again? Machine hours. How many is the machine hours there? 400. And what was our total cost indirect cost? 20,000. So all you're doing is you're taking 20,000 and dividing by 400. Machine intensive, yeah. It's machine intensive. Machine hours intensive. Don't forget that. Right, so the SO divided by, in this case, the machine hours. Dominant factor. Right, so this was equal to how much? $20,000 divided by 400 hours. Right, so this is the OAR, the decorations department. Right, so this is $50 per machine hour. Okay, cool. 50 is correct, right? I seen. Right, so that's 3 marks. Okay, so let's continue. We're almost to the end here. In December 2022, Ellerslie received an order for a customized wedding cake and incurred the following costs in its production. Right, so we have direct materials costs, direct labor costs, and the machine hours spent. Use the absorption rate to work out the indirect overheads, indirect costs for this order. Okay, so check it. If your OAR, the rate at which you're attaching overheads, is $50 per machine hours, and this job took 20 machine hours, how would you find out how was the total overheads cost you're going to apply here then? You multiply, right? Based on what we have down here, your rate is $50 per machine hour, and this job used 20 hours, not so? Right? So 50 by 20 is 1,000. Yeah. Right, so you'll take the OAR, decorations department. Now, this, by the way, this is something we could nitpick something here because it said machine hours spent. Right now, what we have here is just for the decorations department. Anyhow, we're going to multiply by the number of machine hours used, which was 20. Right, so let me pause there for a second, just so you can kind of catch up and see if you have any. So use the absorption rate to work out the indirect costs. And the next part is, in the space provided below, calculate the total production cost for the order. So materials, labor, overheads. Materials, labor, overheads. So we'll work out that next part from real quick. Yo. Multiply what by 50? No. That's just the cost. The materials cost is 450. I don't multiply nothing. So you pull in the 450 as is. You pull in 1250 as is. The only thing you had to calculate was the overheads. And that was the 50 by the 20. Right? And now you're going to add those 3 components together. Yo. My favorite who? That's a tough call, boy. Yeah. I would tell you one of my favorite artists was John Bon Jovi. But well, more his earlier work than the more recent stuff. But not to say the recent stuff bad. I just like the earlier stuff better. Living on a Prayer is iconic. Wanted Dead or Alive is legendary, right? Among others, right? I was very much a big fan of Chester Bennington from Linkin Park. His voice was epic. No Chester from Linkin Park? Well, passed away in 2017. Michael Jackson has one of the most iconic voices of all time. Up to today, I could think about piece of the song from Smooth Criminal. I get goosebumps. This morning, self, I was listening to Dirty Diana. That seems to be making a bit of a resurgence. Oh yeah. Depends on the time in my life I find me in. I don't know. I can't. It's too hard to pick a favorite.
So you don't have like a song that you have like on like a movie song when you get in the car.
It depends on my mood. Like right now, the car I normally drive is under repairs. So I drive in the older car and I have a bunch of CDs inside of there for like the past 10 years. So I have two Ozzy Osbourne CDs inside of there. I have two Sum 41 CDs. I have a Santana CD. And I had a Pantera one too. So yeah, it depends. Uh, old music?
Like not old music, but like not our yet. Like
Okay.
and my mom was so confused. She's like, how do you like the best parts of like our music? Like this isn't even like the good ones. But so I was trying to figure out like what other
Okay.
I was listening to Nickelman.
Yeah, man. Where can I get Cape Unit 1 accounting crash course, Kiara? I had an actual teacher here inside. He did it like 2 3 weeks ago. As a matter of fact, they were still doing a session this morning, but multiple choice, I think. Not sure. Let me talk to her. So, with Kiara, email her. Chris at adaptuition.com or find one on Instagram, whatever. DM it. But this is Kiara Joseph from the YouTube Live. So, notice again, we have the overall total production cost. Refuse. Because they should have paid. I don't know. So you can have a total materials cost, okay? Total labor cost, okay? There's the overall total cost. I don't watch them like the fella with the kind of the jacket. Focus. All right, sorry. All right, so direct materials, direct labor, indirect overheads, yes. Okay, where were the figures? So 450, 1250, and then 1,000, right? Right, and this came from right up here. When you add it together, we get to 27. Yeah, somebody had a long time. Child of God. Very good. Right. I have one more page to go on this item here. All right, so we look at the indirect, we look at the total cost. Okay. The wedding cake maker has a markup policy of 50%. So 50% again, all right. Calculate the selling price for this special wedding cake order. Show all working clearly. That's 3 marks. Okay. So this is total cost. What do we do with this 50% if it's a markup policy? What do we do? That's the previous question, huh? What do we do to figure this out? Correct. And then do what with it? Add it back onto the cost. That's correct. Last piece is what here? ESSA, the head cake maker, is given the job of making the custom cake. It is the company's policy to pay its workers a piece rate system. You're supposed to know about this for CSEC? Yeah, that's not on the syllabus. Just look through the whole thing. Great. Again, dotishness. Anyhow, a piece rate system is where you pay the person. It was in Jan 2025. Piece rate again. All right, I'll check in more. Yeah. Sorry, what was I saying again? Yeah, the piece rate system is where you pay the person for each unit of output they create, right? So what that does, the advantage to the company or to the business is that they therefore pay for output as opposed to just paying for hours spent possibly doing nothing, right? So yeah, that's that. Okay. The business pays for output actually made, yeah, or actual units of output. But they only pay the worker based on being productive, being productive and being actually creating output. That's what I want to say. Right. So this question, I don't find it was as bad as the previous one, especially some of the format points. Right. Oh yeah, you could do 1.5 times the cost. That's true. Um, Take my rule. Devin popped in too. Yes. All right. Yeah, folks. See, that's about it for the question, huh? Right. So we got to the two absorption costing questions. As you can see, it's nothing overly complicated. You have that thing about the OAR, right? The OAR is the overhead absorption rate. So you have to know your formula. The overheads for the department divided by the volume of whatever the application basis is. Whether it's machine hours, direct labor cost, right? It could be anything, but the question is to tell you or give you a way to figure it out. Right? And then how you attach overheads to the job, you multiply the OAR by the actual quantity of the cost driver, machine hours, or direct labor, whatever, or what have you. Oh, thanks very much for the ice cream too. Yeah. Right? As you can see, the costs are direct materials, direct labor, and overheads or indirect costs. And we add the markup onto the cost itself to get the selling price. Right. Now, ladies and gents, we still have one question outstanding from today to do, which is the cash projections question. And we didn't get to do that one. I do have time to do it now, and I don't want to rush it down. I would encourage you to take a look at it. But tomorrow we are here. Hold on. Right. So tomorrow we are here 10 to 12 and 1 to show. Let me change it, right? So tomorrow we have 10 to 12, 1 to 3 with stock valuation. We're trying to do it from scratch do some FIFO, some LIFO, some AFCO straight from the past papers, right? We'll probably take the questions and repeat the same question using different methods. We also have to know how to calculate the value of closing stock at the end, how to do a trading account using the stock valuation information. Now, Sunday, I don't think I could do a 10 to 12 because I don't have childcare in the morning, right? I can't leave my wife with the 2 kids, right? My parents back home after lunch, so they said to bring my son here after lunch, so we could probably do like a 1 to 3 and a half 3 to half 5, or if you all prefer to take an hour in between, we could do 4 to 6, right? Sunday. Tomorrow is regular 10 to 12, 1 to 3, right? Right. And then again for Monday, right? So we know that some of you all have, some of you all have, everybody has English, right? 9 to about half 11, and Spanish is after lunch, right? So of course, if you're doing Spanish, I do expect to see you early. I might see you 4 o'clock, right? If, however, you're not doing Spanish and you want to come after English to start earlier, let me know, right? I'll see if I can send a poll in the chat and we can start a bit earlier. Because the next day is the exam, so we're not far out. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, that is it, right? So we have about 3 and a little more days out from it, right? So yeah, so that's about it for today. All right. So my crash course people, of course, you're very welcome to come tomorrow because we do some stock valuation there, right? Apart from that, if anybody's any questions and you get to ask during class, please feel free to WhatsApp me. And when I have a minute, I'll check you back. Anyhow, guys, that's about it for today. Thanks for joining. I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye. Wait, Eric. Let's stop the recording. No. Did Eric see the same Bobo Clat and Hazel after? Or you get the 1,000 for indirect? They multiply the OAR, or the number machine hours. Good evening. That's all that. Anyhow, YouTube.